This short video is about the problems that we have with so-called economic impact studies of the arts. Why, despite the fact that we see them all the time, are they actually not a good thing? They are a fairly bad metric. So I'm going to go through 4 major problems with economic impact studies of the arts. First problem, they are economically incoherent. Nobody who actually studies economics as a professional or who has been trained in the discipline takes economic impact studies seriously because they don't really make much sense. If you think about how they're calculated, here's the way it usually goes. For any city or state or country, you add up how much people spent on the arts, sometimes just the nonprofit arts, sometimes everything. And you take that number and then you scale it up by a so-called multiplier that is meant to reflect the fact that anybody who earns income in the arts subsequently spends some of that income on other businesses. They go to restaurants, they pay rent, they buy things in shops, and so on. Well, what's wrong with that? 2 things. One, the first thing is it's not really clear what we're actually trying to measure. Because is it telling us that if the arts did not exist, the community would be this much poorer? Well, actually, we don't know that, because if the arts were not there, people would be spending their money on something else, and people would be working in other jobs. And so we're not really sure what it's really telling us, what it's actually meant to be. I can see how economic impact of the arts is calculated in these studies, but it's never really clear to me, and I am an economist, what they're actually trying to tell us. The second economic problem with economic impact studies of the arts is that they are measuring the cost of the sector rather than the benefit. And we know from our talk about metrics, that's what you don't want to do. All right, it's telling us how much people spend in the arts, not the benefits they get from going to performances and exhibitions and film screenings and so on, but just how much they spent. But if you take that logic, and if you take economic impact as a positive thing, it means that if people spend more, it's actually a good thing, but that's actually not true. If I were to do an economic impact study of the healthcare sector in the United States, I would come up with a very, very big number per capita, bigger than any other country in the world, because healthcare in the United States costs a lot. But nobody would say, there's an indicator of how great the American healthcare system is. It isn't. And one of the reasons it isn't is because it costs so much. So economic impact studies are economically misleading. Second big problem with economic impact studies is normally when you're doing arts advocacy, one of the points you want to make is that the arts are different from other sectors, that it's not like just, sort of a production of ordinary humdrum goods or anything like that, but the arts are something quite special. But economic impact studies of the arts actually accomplish the opposite, because what they do, and maybe their whole point, is to make the arts just like any other sector. I have seen economic impact studies of virtually every sector of the economy you can imagine. They're all out there. But what's the point of that? Because if the arts are just like any other sector, well, okay, but you've kind of destroyed the case then for why should there be special arts policies? Why should there be a national endowment for the arts? Why should we have any of this if in fact it's just another sector of the economy? So you're taking away from the idea that the arts are actually something special, all right? The third big problem with economic impact studies of the arts is that they actually don't give you anything. There is no policy decision either at an arts organization level or at a government policy level for which economic impact of the arts is actually a useful number. It doesn't tell you that we should expand this or we should shrink that or we should reallocate funds anywhere. It doesn't tell us anything. It is simply not a useful input in decision making at all. I have never seen in my 25 years of working in this field anybody actually use an economic impact study as a guide to, we should do this instead of that. It doesn't give you anything. And these studies take resources up. They take time to concoct, or you might hire somebody to do it for you, but it doesn't give you anything, right? It doesn't help you in any decision making at all. And what is the point of that? Fourth problem with economic impact studies of the arts is the opportunity cost. If it's the case that they are not very informative, if it's the case that they reduce the arts to just like any other sector, if it's the case that they serve no point at all in any kind of decision making, why use time and energy and resources in working on it when there are so many other things you could be doing? If you want to tell people about the meaning of the arts in society, how important they are, There's a lot of things you could talk about in terms of the joy that the arts give people, those intrinsic benefits. You could even talk about some instrumental benefits, if you like, that it makes us healthier, it builds communities, and all kinds of things. All of those stories you could be telling, they get put aside so that you can talk about how the economic impact of the arts in this community is $85.7 million a year, which, I don't know if that's a big number or a small number, I just made it up, but it doesn't actually matter, does it? It doesn't really give you anything, and it takes you away from doing serious kind of work on arts advocacy. So, 4 major problems with economic impact studies of the arts. 1, they are simply economically incoherent. They're nothing any economist would actually take seriously. 2, they make the arts just like any other sector, and typically the whole point of what we do is that the arts are not just like any other sector. 3, they're uninformative. They don't give you any advice on how to do arts policy or decision making within an organization in any way. And 4th, they're a distraction from the actual interesting stories that you could be telling about the value of the arts in your community.